What's going on, guys? My name's Josh, and I'm back today with the Shining Vale episode recap. Guys, we have a lot to talk about because we just got the season 1 series finale, and I'm here to recap it and talk about that crazy finale. Now, before we get started, if you could do me a favor and please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, you better watch out because it's time to get this video started. Let's go. You guys, before I get started, if you would like to follow me on social media at all, my Instagram handle is Bring On The Night, with the on being 0N, so Bring 0N The Night. So let's get started. So this finale was definitely crazy. I did love this episode, though. I love this finale. It definitely, like I said, it's definitely crazy, and I loved all the references to The Shining in this episode. And first off, I gotta say, Courtney Cox did such a great job in this episode. She definitely did a killer performance, no pun intended. I just thought she did such a great acting job, especially when, she was towards the end of the episode when she's possessed, and then when she was in the hospital. It definitely got a little intense, but it was really good. She did really good. But really in this episode, we see Pat finally realizing how dangerous Rosemary is, and then really Pat trying desperately to stop her. In this episode, Rosemary reveals that she wants Pat to kill her family, and and she's pretty much, Pat agreed to this deal, and now Pat's trying to get out of it, and she doesn't want to kill her family. At the same time, we also see Terry kind of realize how danger, or what's going on with Pat a little bit more. He finds out that Pat has expressed it to the therapist that she wants to kill her family. Well, granted, we know this isn't Pat talking, it's Rosemary talking, but from Terry's perspective, he knows how dangerous Pat could be. So that was really good as well. So then we see Terry, I think really in this episode, the whole episode was good, but especially when Terry goes back to the home, it's when it gets really good, where then, Terry is pretty much tells the kids to stay at the car. He goes back into home and he's really trying to get Roxy, and he's trying to go back to his parents' house. And then pretty much it sounds like they want to have Pat commit it. He's just really trying to get everyone away from Pat for the moment. And then it gets definitely tons of references to The Shining, though, because then Terry goes up in the attic. He finds, we finally find the ending of the book, and the ending of the book was, she kills her family and chops them all up. And then all of a sudden we turn around, and then Pat's behind Terry with an axe. And definitely all reminded me of The Shining, especially when she said, "Here's Patty." We then later see, a scene with Pat. She sees Jake behind her, and she's actually seeing like two versions of him because she's on her medication. She overdosed. And that's definitely a reference to The Shining as far as the two twins. But one thing that, Jake said something and Pat didn't listen to him, as always. I feel like no one ever listens to Jake. But Jake says like, "Oh, Daisy told me there's only one way to stop Rosemary." And Pat didn't listen. And then she kind of turned around and kept going. But then really got crazy when, we saw Pat kind of confront Terry. She tells him she wants to chop his legs off and kind of backing him up the stairs. That was definitely out of The Shining when, Jack Nicholson's character was backing Wendy up the stairs. Or no, he was backing Wendy up the stairs. She had the axe, but definitely reminded me of The Shining for sure. But then pretty much, I love that, in the very beginning of the episode, it's more about, see their marriage, how bad it was, and how much they want to work on their marriage. And really this whole season, we've been seeing them work on their marriage, and things did seem like they were getting better. They seemed happier together. So now it kind of all comes to, we kind of come back to the end and we're revisiting this. And then, Pat, Terry found out this episode that Pat cheating on him again. He kissed Catherine. And then really they're just kind of, Terry's saying like, "I just want, us to be happy. We can be happy." And then Pat, it all finally comes out that Pat is like, "Listen, I can't be happy." And it's hard because Terry wants them to be this big happy family, but Pat right now can't be happy for herself. So then it gets crazier because then Pat, she hits Terry with an axe when really this isn't Pat, it's Rosemary. Hits Terry with an axe. He goes down the stairs. And then Pat kind of takes control again. I really thought that Terry died at first. I was really upset because I love Terry's character, and I really did think he died. But after watching it the second time, she does kind of go down the stairs. Gaynor kind of confronts her, and then pretty much Pat says like, "Oh no, he's alive." So Terry did live, so that makes me happy. But then pretty much we see, Pat pass out, and then the ending of the episode gets crazy too, because Pat wakes up at, she's in the hospital at a psychiatric, hospital, and she's strapped down to the bed, and pretty much Gaynor is going to have her committed. So it kind of all came full circle because, Pat did this with her mom. She had to have her mom committed after her mom tried to commit suicide. And it all kind of comes back full circle where now Gaynor is committing Pat. Although, Pat is like, there's a demon. There's, no one believes Pat that there's a demon, and no one knows about Rosemary. So there is reason why, Pat was acting the way she was. But either way, Gaynor has her committed. So that was all kind of crazy. And then it makes sense too why we had, the grandma come in and kind of tell those stories, is because it was going to lead up to full circle with Pat being committed. But I think the very end of the episode, this is where it gets a little confusing, is we see when Pat gets kind of pulled away, or she's getting taken away, she sees a picture on the wall and she says, "That's my house." And as you look closer to that house, it says the Shining Vale Home for Hysterical Women, June 23rd, 1859. And then if you look at that picture, it's a picture of Rosemary, and then it ends with saying, "Welcome home." That is a little bit confusing. So that date, so June 23rd, that's a date that Rosemary in 1954 killed her family. So on June 23rd, 1954, Rosemary killed all her family. So then it ties back somehow to this picture. That picture was taken June 23rd, 1859. Which that has me confusing, because I thought Rosemary was alive in the 50s, but then she's alive in this 1859. So that I was a little bit confused about. But I'm thinking just a home for hysterical women. So I think this is what this kind of home was. So it sounds like for hysterical women, it used to be back in the day where, and they even kind of talk about this in the show a little bit, where people wouldn't believe when women would say they're sick or something was wrong, they wouldn't believe them. And they would kind of say, "Oh, you're hysterical." And they would kind of diagnose them as having hysteria. And it sounds like this home for hysterical women is women who maybe have something wrong or something's going on. They instead of helping these women and help dealing with their problems, it sounds like they might stick these women into this like home. So it might be a home for, they say hysterical women, and they might treat it maybe similar to like a psychiatric hospital. That's my interpretation of what this home is. But it sounds like that home was at, the Pats, the Phelps, that family home. It sounds like this hospital or whatever was there. So my guess is something bad happened on June 23rd that maybe cursed the house. And then that's why, this house is cursed. Something happened on June 23rd to make Rosemary kill her family. The only thing I'm confused about is, how is Rosemary alive in 1859? So maybe, I don't know, maybe the real Rosemary lived in 1859. I'm sure we're going to find this more about, hopefully we get another season, but I'm sure we're going to find more about this on season 2. But my guess is the real Rosemary lived in 1859, and then, I'm not sure. Then somehow she got possessed or something like that, and then, I don't know, maybe she's haunting that home and she took over someone else. I don't know. I'm confused on that, but something happened. We'll find out more in season 2. That's kind of my take on that. But that's overall, I did really, really like this episode. It definitely leaves me with lots more questions. I want to know, and also at the end of the episode, we saw, Gaynor and Jake holding hand. Jake's is like, "Are we going to be all right?" And then Gaynor's like, "Yes, we're Phelps." So I think it leaves it in a really good, a good spot for season 2. What's going to happen with Pat? And, she's locked up in a mental hospital now. So she's going to be trying to get out. Rosemary's still around, so she's going to be after her. What's going to happen with Gaynor and Jake? Are they on their own now? I'm assuming, Terry's still alive. Maybe he's in the hospital. Is he going to stay with Pat? Is he going to divorce her? Is he going to get with Catherine? What's going on with Gaynor? Is she pregnant? Is she going to run away with Ryan? I just feel like there's lots of questions. And I'm very looking forward. And I really do hope we get a season 2. But that was a lot. But we'll get into the recap now. So the episode opens up with Pat hanging off the ledge at the top of a home. She was placed there by Rosemary after she confronted Rosemary last episode. We then see all her families kind of distracted in the kitchen. We then see Pat fall on the ground from the kitchen window. that part was really funny, seeing like Pat. Yeah, I don't know. I laughed at that. We then see, Pat then going into the woods. She's trying to bury evidence of Valerie's necklace. We then see Pat pretty much killing her whole family. First, she kills Roxy. Then Jake comes up. She kills Jake. Then we see her kill Gaynor and then Terry. And then she kind of wakes up. It was all a dream. And then pretty much she wakes up. Roxy wakes her up. Roxy's covered in dirt. So Pat, gives her a bath. We then see Pat tell Terry, pretty much Pat tells Terry about the dream that the kids and him were all dead. Terry then starts to confess that he kissed Catherine, but at the same time, Pat is starting to receive a bunch of text messages from Blake, and there's a bunch of pictures of their night together in the car. And Pat is so busy and just so distracted. I don't even know if she's really listening to Terry, talk about he kissed Catherine. She just kind of tells him she trusts him and she got to leave. Gaynor tries to talk to, Pat in the kitchen, and Pat says she doesn't have time for her. And Gaynor just kind of mumbles, like, don't act like you care. And then she calls her a crazy bitch. Pat comes back and says, I don't know who you're talking to. But that was a horrible demon voice. I don't know who you're talking to. And then she said something like that in her demon voice. I don't know. It was... Definitely that wasn't Pat. That was definitely Rosemary coming out. But it's crazy that none of them realized that, like, Pat is possessed. Like, how do you not recognize a demon voice when you hear it? Gaynor just kind of looks at her, and then all the family are like, his mom acting more crazy than normal. We then do see Gaynor may be pregnant. It looks like she's 7 days late. We then see Jake is carrying a fencing sword in case Dan comes back. He wants to protect himself. And then he reveals Dan's skull. He reveals this to Terry and Pat. Then Pat grabs the skull, and kind of Rosemary comes out and says, why can't you be normal? And she says this in that demon voice as well. And then she kind of leaves. And then we then see Pat go back to the Wiccan shop where she meets with Seth, the Wiccan, and she pretty much tells him she got possessed. Pat tells him what's been going on with Rosemary, and he kind of gives her her option. She can get an exorcism, but that takes a long time. She could kill herself, or she could live a clean and sober life. Pat pretty much tells Seth about the book. She says, should she let Rosemary finish the book? And Seth says, no. You make a bargain with the demon, and if you hold up your end of the bargain, the demon owns you forever. So if Pat lets Rosemary finish this book, then Rosemary owns Pat from that point on. So she knows she can't let Rosemary finish the book. Seth then tries to get rid of Rosemary himself, but then we see Rosemary take over, and then we see Pat come into, and then she sees, Seth is naked, and he's all scratched up, and he's scared of Pat and tells her to leave. So he did try to exorcise or do some kind of spell to get rid of Rosemary, but yeah, it didn't work. It just made Rosemary mad. We then see Pat go home. She tries to delete the book, but Rosemary won't let her. She kind of appears and tells Pat that they have a deal. Cam calls Pat, and we find out that Pat's book has been picked up for the summer release. So kind of one of Pat's big goals. She got her summer release, but then we find out Claire is in a coma. So the other younger writer who was competing for the summer release is in a coma. And pretty much Rosemary used, Claire's glove and somehow put her in a coma after the party. Then the next day, we see Pat has kind of gone cold turkey and stopped taking her medication. She really doesn't want, she's not letting Rosemary possess her. Rosemary appears to her, tells her, Rosemary appears to her, tells her to, she needs to take her medication. Pat says no. And then Rosemary pretty much sends all of Pat's photos with Blake to Terry. So then now Terry has proof that, Pat cheated on him. Pat tells, Terry that this is a demon. And then pretty much Terry tells Pat it's over, and she destroyed everything. So Terry leaves Pat. Gaynor meets up with Ryan. They talk about Gaynor ghosting him. Ryan tells Gaynor he's leaving and going to LA. He actually asks Gaynor to go with him. He says he's getting a lot of money from selling the house and his trust fund. Gaynor says she's in, and she wants to get the fuck out of Shining Vale. And then she tells Ryan that she might be pregnant. We then see Terry goes to therapy. And he thought, and then he's just kind of talking to the therapist. He's like, I don't understand it. He's like, I get why, Pat cheated the first time because she was unhappy, but he thought she was really happy now and she cheated on him again. So he's just really confused by it. The therapist, and then he even says, like, I think, it's like she's two people. The therapist plays Terry a voicemail of Pat canceling the last session, and Pat leaves a crazy voicemail. She's pretty much is saying, and it's not Pat really leaving it, it's Rosemary, but she's pretty much saying when a woman feels depressed, listen to her and don't just prescribe her more medicine. Don't just prescribe her more medicine. And then she says that they won't be coming back because she's going to kill them all. And then she says, but you need to prescribe me some more clozapam. So the therapist reveals that he called in to put a 3-day psychiatric hold for Pat because he thinks she's dangerous. But then he looks in his records and he actually forgot to call it, which Terry calls him a horrible therapist. We then see Gaynor. So then pretty much Terry now knows how dangerous Pat is because she's having these thoughts of killing her family. He grabs Gaynor and Jake and they all kind of go home. He says, they're going to stay with his parents. He tells them to stay in the car and he pretty much says, keep the doors locked. And he goes in to try to go look for Roxy. Then we see Pat talking to Rosemary. She's asked, why me? And Rosemary says, because she comes alive in Pat's writing. And Rosemary says, no one writes me like you. And then she pretty much says, Rosemary tempts Pat with finishing the book. And it's like, come on, let's just finish in the book. I'll show you how it ends. And then we see Terry comes home and he's looking for Roxy. We see one of the doors shuts. Then Terry kind of breaks it down with an axe. We see that then see kind of Rosemary alive on the vintage projector, and we kind of see the day of when she snaps and kills her family. And then after a minute, we see, someone cleaning up blood. And then if you look at the projector, it's actually Pat cleaning up the blood. And then pretty much Pat says, listen, I'm not killing my family. Rosemary says that, we're the same person. We're two strong women driven to the brink by their families. But Pat says she's not a psychopath. Rosemary says, haven't you ever thought about killing your family? And Pat says, of course, I'm a mother. Of course I have. And Rosemary is like, oh yeah, take your medicine. Rosemary's really trying hard to possess Pat. And then Rosemary's arms start to shake and she has help me written on the side of her arm, which was odd. And then pretty much Pat tries to reason with her and she's like, Pat tries to reason with her. She tells her she doesn't want to kill her family. Rosemary says, she wants to move on. She wants Pat to kill her family so Rosemary can move on. And then Pat pretty much Rosemary says, listen, you have no choice. You made a deal. I'm taking over and you're going to kill your family. Pat says, fuck you. And Rosemary says, I don't think you know who you're dealing with. Or then Pat, as badass, says, Pat says, you don't know who you're dealing with, which I love that. Pat then takes the medicine and she tries to kill herself. Rosemary then offers a new deal. She wants Pat to kill. You just got to kill Terry. You don't have to kill the kids, but you need to kill Terry. And she's trying to convince Pat on why she should kill Terry. And pretty much she says that Terry's trying to sabotage her book. And then kind of Rosemary finally takes over because Pat has now taken the medication. She's really out of it. Rosemary takes over. Then we see Pat in the attic talking to Cam, and then we find out the ending of the book. The ending of the book is really with, the main character chopping up her family with an axe. All of a sudden, we turn around and we see, Pat with an axe saying, here's Patty, straight out of The Shining. And then we see Daisy. So then we see Jake put on his virtual reality goggles, and Daisy tells him to run. We then see Gaynor, Jake, and Roxy all running to the house. Pat then swings an axe at Terry, but it misses Terry and hits a beam. Terry kind of runs downstairs. Roxy leads Gaynor to the buried necklace of Valerie. And so we kind of see, Gaynor find this necklace. And then we see Pat walking up the hallways, very much like The Shining. We see Pat she's seeing double vision, but she sees two Jakes. It's definitely like the twins in The Shining. And Jake is telling Pat a message from Daisy. He says there's only one way to stop Rosemary. Pat ignores him. We then see Pat confront Terry again at the bottom of the stairs. She tells Terry she's going to chop his legs off and kind of swinging the axe on him. She is backing Terry up the stairs, and, Terry, it's definitely reminding me of The Shining for sure. Pat tells Terry he has impossible standards for what's meant to be a spouse. She says she can't be happy And Terry says they can be happy, and she just wants Terry to do something. She's done all this, she cheated on him, and he never does anything. He pokes her with the fencing sword, and then all of a sudden she hits him with an axe. But it really was Rosemary hits him with an axe. He kind of goes down the stairs, and then Pat kind of comes to. She runs down the stairs, and then she kind of sees Gaynor. Gaynor confronts her about Valerie's necklace. Like, why do you have it? I found it buried in the backyard. And why is Dad dead? Pat says, Terry's alive. So we do see Terry breathing. Then Rosemary starts to take over, and then she actually goes after Gaynor. But then at this point, Pat collapses because she's dying. We then see a happier time with Pat and the kids. Their kids are all young. Gaynor doesn't want to go to new school. She's kind of scared. And then Terry tells them they can do anything they want because they're Phelps. There's a really sweet scene between their family. Flash forward, Pat wakes up in a psychiatric hospital. She's strapped down, and she pretty much was committed because she overdosed on expired barbiturates. She says, no, don't lock me up. I'm not crazy. There's a demon. And Gaynor, pretty much, we then see Gaynor signs a form that has Pat committed. Jake asks, are we going to be okay? Gaynor says, we're Phelps. We then see Pat freaking out. She's telling Gaynor, please don't lock her up. She's not crazy. She then sees a picture on the wall. And yeah, it's the Shining Vale home for hysterical women, June 23rd, 1859. In the picture is Rosemary. And then we hear Rosemary say, welcome home. So yes, guys, that was the ending. Definitely a lot going on. But I really want to have your comments in this video. So if you watched this far, please leave your comments. And I want to know, what did you think of this finale? What did you think of the series, first of all? Did you like the series? But really, more importantly, what did you think of the finale? What are you looking forward to in season 2? What do you think that picture on the wall meant? I definitely need your help in trying to interpret what that meant. Why was Rosemary in the picture in 1859? Was she alive in 1859, but also in the 50s? I was a little confused on that, so I'm going to need your theories as well. But any comments, please leave them below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. And yeah, I've had a blast, making these Shining Vale videos. I love this show. And yeah, if we get a season 2, I will definitely be back. Thank you for watching.